And what we were doing,
skepticism,
what we were doing in COVID and still with regard to these vaccines is getting the best information, the best science that we can, and putting it out there. And sir, what you are doing is causing information to be out there that is not accurate.
Welcome back to Reflect Politics. That was just a small sample of the meltdown you're about to see RFK Jr. experience on CNN when Dana Bash confronted him on her Sunday morning program about all of his lies, ranging from COVID-19 to the link between autism and vaccines to the measles outbreak and his role in it. Now, Dana Bash was being very polite there, saying that he has caused information to be out there that is not accurate. RFK Jr. is simply lying to the American people to pretend as though he has the authority on science and research and our health, when the reality is this guy should be the last guy we trust with the future of America's health. If you like videos like this, be sure to hit that thumbs up button and subscribe to Reflect Politics.
Here with me now is the Health and Human Services Secretary, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Appreciate it. You have been placing nearly all the blame on the COVID pandemic and the way that the U.S. responded to it squarely with Dr. Fauci. But of course, he worked for President Trump. Does President Trump also deserve some of the blame?
Well, President Trump, as you recall, wanted to end the lockdowns. I think the thing that did the most damage to our country was the lockdowns that shut down 3.5 million businesses in our country with no due process, no just compensation. All of our churches closed our schools, and our children are still paying the price for that. And yet we had the worst outcome of any country in the world.
How so?
We have the highest death rate from COVID of any nation on earth.
Well, let me just say, because I've heard you say that before on the death rate from COVID, it's not accurate because public health experts say that there is a combination of factors that went into that: higher rates of chronic illnesses, which I know you would agree with, gaps to our healthcare system, and misinformation about vaccines.
But you just said what I said was inaccurate. What I said was accurate. We had the highest death rate from COVID of any.
Well, there are other countries that had higher, but
you can
go ahead.
argue about why we had that, but nobody can tell you. I mean, we have, as you say, we have the highest chronic disease burden in the world. But Anthony Fauci was mismanaging the COVID pandemic, and he was doing it under the Biden administration. President Trump wanted to end the lockdowns. And in fact, in Anthony Fauci's diaries, he talks about how President Trump is calling him every day, trying to get him to reopen the country.
Yeah, well, the lockdowns were done by governors. I mean, certainly Anthony Fauci and the president had opinions, but the lockdowns were done by governors, and largely because they were hearing from hospitals saying that their ICUs were overrun and they needed some help while that was happening.
Well, that's not true. That's just not true.
It is
true.
What
you're saying is not true. No, they were doing it because Anthony Fauci was telling them from the top, you need to lock down. There were ICUs that were empty all over the country, including in New York at the height.
I'm asking you, I'm going to go back to what I asked you at the beginning, which is President Trump. And he was the guy in charge. And you tweeted back in 2024 that he let bureaucrats like Anthony Fauci shut down the entire country. Again, the president was in charge.
The president was trying to reopen the country when he left. The country was kept closed for another year, almost a year and a half after that.
Of course, RFK Jr. has to blame Anthony Fauci and Joe Biden for the COVID-19 pandemic and not Donald Trump, the guy who was the president of the United States at the time, because if RFK Jr. would have done that, Donald Trump would have fired him right after that interview, because all Donald Trump cares about is his fragile little ego, not telling the truth to the American people. As a matter of fact, RFK Jr. lied about America having the highest death rate. There are a number of other countries that had higher death rates than us, and countries that had around our death rate, but were severely underreporting the cases that they had. Also, RFK Jr. complaining that the lockdowns hurt our economy, when it's estimated that the lockdowns helped to reduce the mortality rate by 2% in the United States, 27% in Brazil, and up to 60% in Italy and Spain. So RFK Jr. here, lying.
Let's talk about how to prevent the next pandemic. Because there's a lot of litigating and relitigating that I don't think is really helpful to do with regard to COVID. And the question is about so-called gain of function, which for people who aren't entirely clear about it, it is a highly risky research process that includes manipulating a virus to study how it behaves as it evolves. Now, what scientists say is that although it's controversial, it's necessary to prepare for the next pandemic, to get ahead of it, to figure out what these viruses can do. You want to end this gain-of-function research. Some scientists say, isn't it better just to put better guardrails around it?
People have been trying to put guardrails around it for generations, and it hasn't worked. And clearly, COVID-19 pandemic and many other global pandemics that we have come from gain-of-function research. The RSV epidemic that we have, that is the biggest killer of kids in this country today, came from these kind of experiments. The Lyme disease almost certainly came from this kind of research. So, and the scientists who you say are experts are making the argument that this is necessary for pandemic response, cannot point to one instance in history where research that came out of this kind of experimentation has actually provided us something beneficial.
So how do you prepare then? How do you prepare for the next pandemic? I mean, that's literally part of your job now, because experts think it's going to happen within the next 10 years again.
Yeah, I mean, I think we did virtually everything wrong the last time.
So what about now?
The principal thing that we need to do is we need to listen to what's happening to doctors on the ground. There are 15 million frontline physicians around the world. They're mainly now connected through the internet. We can tell on the front lines what's working and what's not. If we had listened to those doctors during the COVID pandemic, we would have saved potentially millions of lives. There were therapeutics out there that were working. There were doctors that were having no deaths from COVID and treating, in some cases, thousands of patients. And we weren't listening to them. Instead, we were doing the opposite. We were shutting them down. And then, Dana, the other thing that I would say is that we need to protect our constitutional rights. That is the primary obligation
of our country. What does that mean?
Well, during COVID, we completely dismantled our constitutional rights. We began censoring people in violation of the First Amendment.
But I'm not, you're saying what not to do. I'm asking what to do. But I want to talk about.
That's something to do. That is the number one priority. We protect the Constitution. The Constitution was written.
Forgive me, but you're talking about rights, and I'm asking about a potential public health crisis that is coming. But I do want to
And one of the mistakes we made in the last time was suppressing those rights so people weren't being heard. The doctors who were saying you're doing it wrong were being marginalized and vilified.
Yeah,
and
because again, I really want to move on, but.
Yeah,
you were saying you were
yes, you were part of the problem.
No, I wasn't part of the problem.
There was absolute press malpractice. You weren't allowing your
Mr.
job,
Secretary,
your job is a fierce skepticism toward authority. And
yes,
you weren't doing that. You were beating up
My
on
job
people
is also,
who were dissenting.
No. Okay, you want to sit here and attack me, or do you want to have conversations about public health?
Me.
I'm not attacking you. I'm asking questions about how to prevent the next pandemic.
Question, and I'll tell you.
That's what I'm trying to do. But I also don't want to use this interview to allow you to say things that aren't entirely true. You're talking about therapeutics, fine. It is also factually true that the COVID vaccine worked. The COVID vaccine prevented deaths. There is data upon data upon data.
More absurd claims from RFK Jr. here. One, that gain-of-function research caused global pandemics, when gain-of-function research is the main thing driving vaccines for global research, because all it is scientists mimicking virus strains so that they can create vaccines, and doing this in controlled labs. Even Dana Bash describing it as risky is also kind of absurd, but that just goes to show you how the far right and the Maha movement's attacks on science and gain of function research has destroyed the global discourse about science.
Let's talk about the measles, please, because this is something that is happening as we speak. Cases in the U.S.
vaccine protected children.
I think that what I have talked to scientists and doctors about.
Scientists. Can you show me one study?
Yes, I can.
That shows that
I can.
Children were protected by the COVID vaccine.
I can tell you that
there vaccine did more good than harm to children. Can you show me one study that shows that?
I can tell you that when it comes to the vaccine, there have been studies that show that because of vaccine disinformation, there could have been 100 to 200,000 lives in the U.S. saved. But because people didn't get the vaccine, that's why. I'm not saying that it entirely.
You
let
are
me finish.
saying
Let me
nonsense.
finish.
You are saying something that you cannot show me
Okay.
a single study.
I am
that
not
says
saying
that.
nonsense.
You
I
are
am
talking what
Excuse
somebody
me.
told you.
Excuse me.
And you
Let me
cite me the study.
What
study?
No, what
Cite
studies
me
are
the
you
study.
talking about? You're talking about studies that actually don't exist. I want to talk about.
Cite me the
I am
study
not,
that you're talking about. If
I am
you
not
say
here
you've
to
seen
defend.
studies, cite me the study.
This is not productive. I am not here to defend all of the. Let me
You're
finish.
talking nonsense.
Let
You're
me
making
finish.
assertions you can't support, and then when I call you on them, you're telling me that I'm arguing.
Okay,
with
do you want to talk about assertions that you can't support? I'll get there in a second. Let me just say, for the record, that I am not saying that the entire way that the COVID reaction was accurate. It was a scary time, and people made mistakes. Absolutely.
You were scaring people.
Why are you saying that?
Because that was the job of CNN.
Okay.
Was to put the
stop.
chyrons up about
stop.
how many people are
We were
dying.
trying to
get people
we were
to
listening
comply.
to the leaders in this country, including the president, who had a daily press conference explaining what was going on and trying to listen.
Were you listening?
I want to talk to
scientists,
measles.
Actually, were you reading the science yourself?
The measles cases in the U.S. just reached a 35-year high. The second record-breaking year in a row. 93% of these cases are among the unvaccinated. The outbreak has happened on your watch. And even before becoming HHS secretary for years, you have been one of the leading voices questioning the efficacy of vaccines. Do you accept some responsibility for this measles outbreak?
Absolutely not. First of all, this is an international outbreak. So, and we're doing better at handling it than any country in the world. Mexico has 15 times the amount of measles per capita that we have. Canada has 4 times the amount of measles. England has 2 times the amount of measles. Did I cause those measles outbreaks?
You're the most famous.
Did I cause 137,000 cases?
You're the most famous vaccine skeptic on the planet.
Let me tell you, because actually Anthony Fauci in his diaries answers the question about why we're having a measles outbreak right now. The reason we're having a measles outbreak because of the COVID lockdowns, because people children during that period did not get vaccinated. And in his diaries, he says this is going to cause massive outbreaks in measles and more children. He says this are going to die. Let me finish, because you accused me of something. Now let me.
No, I didn't. I asked you a question.
Yeah, let me give you the answer. He says in his diaries, more children are going to die from measles because of these lockdowns than COVID. So if you want to know, and that age group that should have gotten the MMR when they were 18 months and didn't get it, they're the ones being infected. The people in this country, and we have stopped the outbreaks at record speed in South Carolina, in Texas, in Utah, in Virginia. We've done better than any country in the world. I dispatch immediately the epidemic intelligence services to those states. I get on the phone with the governor, and we stop them in their tracks. Nobody else has been able to do that.
You have a bully pulpit.
Let me tell you just one last thing.
Go ahead.
The communities that are suffering from measles are almost all religious communities that just don't vaccinate. The Mennonites have not vaccinated since 1796, since Edward Jenner invented the smallpox vaccine. It's hard to blame that on me, as much as you want to blame it.
No, I don't want to blame you. I'm asking you because you have a very powerful voice on these issues for people who are skeptical. Let me finish. Let me finish.
I've never questioned the efficacy of the MMR vaccine.
Okay, let me finish. What I want you to do is please use your bully pulpit to right now, as we're getting close to back to school, are you willing to say to parents who have not vaccinated their kids that they should vaccinate their kids for measles because it is safe and it will help them save their children's lives?
We tell people on my websites, my public
right now,
I'll
look
say
into the
right
camera.
now that parents should get their children vaccinated for measles. A measles vaccine is effective. It stops measles in about 97% of the cases. But people should get vaccinated.
One step forward and 2 steps back for RFK Jr. here, because Dana Bash did make some progress with him, got him to tell parents across the country, the millions of people who are going to watch this, that their kids need to get vaccinated for measles. But then he also spread mistruths, disinformation about Anthony Fauci and his diary and him being concerned about a measles outbreak. That part was true, but he left out the fact that Anthony Fauci was advising Donald Trump on all of this, and Donald Trump couldn't do anything about potentially vaccinating kids for measles because of people like RFK Jr. and the Maha movement and the anti-vax movement. And Donald Trump is such a coward, and again, doesn't care about Americans' health. He just cared about holding on to power. So he catered to these people and didn't do anything about the disruptions that COVID-19 had and COVID-19 caused in the measles schedule for millions of children. Donald Trump is the one to blame for this measles outbreak. RFK Jr. and his ilk, these Maha liars, are the ones to blame.
Can I ask you, the Wall Street Journal reported that the president is pressuring you to conduct studies probing the link between vaccines and autism. Is that true?
Did you say probing the link?
That I'm just quoting the Wall Street Journal, that the president wants you to go further to probe the link between autism and vaccines.
He certainly does.
Okay. Now, have you talked to him about medical research that have studied this for 25 years and found no link between autism and vaccines? And just this is my question here, because I don't want to litigate that. My question is, why not, because you are HHS secretary now, why not study what could cause autism, which scientists do believe starts with fetal brain development? Why not do some studies on that, whether you're an environmental lawyer, whether there are environmental factors that go into contributing to a predisposed genetic situation?
Well, let me say this first. We're doing all those things, and that's one of the ways that we found Tylenol. There's 73 studies out there and link Tylenol exposure during later pregnancy and during the perinatal period to autism onset. But you are wrong when you say that this issue has been studied. It has been studied, and you're rolling your eyes, Dan. But
I am, because I don't want to have you use our air to say this. There have been more than 40 studies involving 5.6 million people to conclude there is no link between vaccines and autism. This is the head of the Committee of Infectious Diseases for the American Academy of Pediatrics.
And now let me tell you what the Institute of Medicine says, which is the National Academy of Sciences, which is the ultimate arbiter on vaccine safety, and which it does not have an interest in this debate. It says that none of the 8 vaccines that are administered during the first 6 months of life have ever been studied for relationship to autism. It found 2 studies, one on the DTP vaccine that showed that it does cause autism, and one on the hepatitis B vaccine that again suggests that it does cause autism. The Institute of Medicine dismissed those 2 studies because they were based on CDC's database. The studies that you're referring to are all from one vaccine, the MMR vaccine, or one ingredient, thimerosal.
So you are actually looking at, you're starting new studies to try to link autism, but you're also telling me—
I'm not trying to link autism to anything. I'm trying to find out, why has autism gone
Are you
from
also
less
trying?
than one,
Are you also trying to find out how it interacts with people's DNA, what's predisposed to have an autistic child? Are you doing both?
Yeah, but Dana, you probably don't understand this because you're not a scientist. But genes
you're not either.
Genes don't cause epidemics.
I understand genes.
They provide a vulnerability.
A gene provides an environmental. That's what I'm asking. Are you studying the environmental
We're looking
exposure?
at all the different environmental exposures, but your statement, you have been fooled. Your statement that this has been studied is not true. It's categorically not true. Not for any of the studies.
It is considered.
Considered by who?
By every scientist who has studied this.
That is not true. I can give you hundreds of scientists who have looked at this.
So on the one hand, do you understand why people aren't getting—
National Academy of Sciences. What greater authority
do you understand why people are not getting measles vaccines? Because they're hearing you say that it could cause autism.
You're trying to change the subject.
I'm not. It's very much related.
Show me one of the studies that's been done on the first 8 the vaccines during the first 6 months of life. You will not find them. The National Academy of Sciences.
So if that's the case, then why are you telling people to get the measles vaccine?
Because that is one of the vaccines that has been studied.
Okay.
It's the only one that has been studied.
Do you want people to get the MMR vaccine?
Yeah, I said that already.
Okay, so
I know you're flustered now, and it is.
I'm not flustered at all. I am frustrated.
Been honest
the reason I'm frustrated is because you are the HHS secretary, and you are talking about things that lead to vaccine hesitancy in this country, and it is something that causes problems for people
Let me
when
ask
there
you-
is not anything.
Let me ask you something. Do you see your job as ending vaccine hesitancy, or do you see your job as telling the truth to the American people?
I see my job as telling the truth, and the truth is that there is study after study after study. It's one of the most studied things out there in science.
You're repeating
and
it like a parrot. You're repeating
So are
it
you.
like a parrot.
So
I've
are you.
actually read the science.
You
You
don't
and I
wanna-
come
you don't
back
wanna-
here and debate the
So
science.
I'm not debating this with you.
Of course you won't.
No, because I'm not
all you
debating
know how to
also-
do is repeat things that people told you and say, trust the experts. That's what you did during COVID. Now we know that Anthony Fauci, who was the expert, was lying about everything, about masks, about social distancing, about natural immunity, about the transmission from the vaccine, about the source of COVID. He was lying, and you were punishing people for not trusting the experts. And now you're rolling out the experts again
Yes.
to talk about something that you have no personal knowledge of.
Okay, well, guess what? That is my job, to talk to people.
Your job is to
Am I
tell the
allowed to
truth
talk?
to the American
yes,
public.
yes. And my job
And
is
to
to
be-
get as
and
much
to-
information as I
and
can.
to maintain
what we were doing,
a posture
what we were
of
doing,
fierce skepticism
what we
toward
were
government
doing
authority.
in COVID and still, with regard to these vaccines, is getting the best information, the best science that we can, and putting it out there. And sir, what you are doing is causing
getting the best
information
science
to
from
be out there
somebody
that is
who's lying to
not
you.
accurate.
Who was lying to
The
you?
National Academy of Sciences, which you just cited, in November, said we support the statement that vaccines do not cause autism. This is the National Academy of Sciences that you just talked about.
Look at the National Academy of Science most recent report.
Okay.
And you'll see.
Now I'm going to drop a bombshell on you, and that's that the recent report that RFK Jr. wants us to go look at simply doesn't exist. He just made it up. And then going back to Tylenol being linked to autism, again, what they're failing to tell you is that pregnant mothers take Tylenol to help with the pain of other underlying conditions that impact the neurodevelopment of their infant. So they're just blaming it all on Tylenol and not looking at the other environmental factors, because again, these people don't know what they're talking about when it comes to science, and they can't be trusted with our health. Senator Rand Paul became unhinged this morning and threw out Anthony Fauci's lawyer because he was trying to defend Fauci from Rand Paul, who was threatening Fauci because Fauci was invoking his constitutional rights.
The chairman has denied your assertion of privilege and directed you to answer, but you nonetheless refuse and stand on privilege despite the existence of the pardon. The committee will have to consider after this hearing what appropriate action should be taken against you for the failure to testify after being directed to do so. It's against the law to obstruct an investigation of Congress. There will be repercussions to your refusal to testify today. Senator Peters.
Chairman Paul, may I make a comment? I am counsel.
You're not recognized. You're not recognized. If you are unruly, you will be removed from the proceeding. You are not recognized, and you are not recognized, sir. Sir, you are not recognized. You are not recognized. Security, we'll hold off. But you will respect these proceedings. You were told not to sit at the table. You insist on sitting at the table, and we told you would not be recognized. You are not invited here for testimony, sir. You are being disruptive. Would you behave this way in a courtroom? No, because the judge would put you in jail. I can't do that today, but I can have you escorted from the premises. So I would say, sir, sit quietly and don't say another word. I said, sit quietly. You are not recognized. Another word and you're gone.
So, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to hear what the attorney has to say.
He is not recognized by the committee or the chair. If he speaks again, he will be removed from the room. This testimony is from Anthony Fauci. This is not a game with his lawyers. He can advise, his lawyers can give him advice. He's got a half dozen here. They're all allowed to talk to him.
Yes.
All right? But the attorneys are not recognized. In fact, the attorney was told not to sit at the table, and he's not obeying that recommendation. There's a row behind you, sir. That's where you were told to sit, and you're not. And now you're disrupting the proceedings. And so, look, this is the way Anthony Fauci wants to be remembered, for a lawyer not listening to the rules. That's the way you want to be remembered, and that's what you're going to do. You are not recognized, sir. Security, please remove him from the room.
I just opened here.
Rand Paul's behavior here is symbolic of the essence of the Republican Party, and that's to attack scientists and science and facts and data. And then when lawyers step in and try to defend the truth, you just kick them out. Muzzle scientists, muzzle lawyers who don't agree with you, who want to call out your obvious lies and bullshit. That's the Republican Party. Like, if you think, oh, once we're done with Donald Trump, we're on to a much brighter day, which, yeah, I mean, a little bit. But there is still a lot of babies inside the Republican Party that we're going to have to coddle as they continue to throw these anti-science, anti-law and order tantrums time after time. Now, Anthony Fauci, if you're not familiar with what's been going on, used a few minutes in his opening statement to call out Rand Paul for constantly attacking him over the years.
It's a practice of this committee to swear in the witness. Dr. Fauci, please stand and raise your right hand. Do you swear that the testimony you will give before this committee will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? So help you God. Dr. Anthony Fauci, you are recognized for 5 minutes for your opening statement.
Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member Peters, members of the committee, I served at the NIH for over 54 years, 38 of those as director of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases. Over that period, I proved that I believe in and respect the value of legitimate congressional oversight. In fact, I testified before and/or briefed Senate and House Senate and House committees well over 200 times over those 38 years. During and after the COVID pandemic, I have appeared multiple times for hearings in the Senate and the House, usually under oath, and sat for several days-long transcribed sworn interviews answering questions about the very issues that are now the subject of this hearing. However, given Senator Paul's obvious obsession with calling for my prosecution, his repeated slanderous comments about me, and recently his publicly releasing my unredacted personal diary aimed at embarrassing and intimidating me, the only conclusion I can reach is that the sole reason he is calling me before this committee is to get me to say something, anything, that could vindicate his repeated public pledges that I end up, in his words, quote, behind bars, unquote. Any reasonable person who has followed his unhinged obsession with me would readily come to the same conclusion. Therefore, although it pains me to do so, because of the respect I have for the legislative branch of government and my decades-long record of cooperating with Congress, Under the advice of my attorneys, I will invoke my right under the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution to refrain from answering your questions. Thank you.
For years, Rand Paul has targeted and threatened Anthony Fauci, and Fauci simply said, I'm not going to play your game. When you hold all the cards here as the ranking member on this committee, I am in your arena, but I'm going to flip the script on you, and I'm not going to give you these back and forths that you want so that you can try to trip me up and then threaten me or have me arrested for lying to Congress. Fauci says he's just not going to give Rand Paul the ability to do so. And so, of course, Rand Paul throws a fit and throws out his attorney to once again try to trip Anthony Fauci up, just like he did when he released his journal or brought in a dozen social media influencers who lied about COVID-19, like Laura Ingraham, who you can see in the back there. Watch this moment where a senator tried to get Anthony Fauci to turn around and look at the influencers who had been shamed for lying.
Dr. Fauci, can you just turn around and look at the people behind you? You're not willing to do that? That's not a question. It's not a question. To your lawyer, it's not a question. It's a request. All you have to do is look up from your lawyers and look at the people who were absolutely shamed for saying what we know now to be the truth. You can't even look at them? That's a question. Are you able to look at them? You can sit down in the audience.
These Republicans are so desperate to have their big viral moment. And it's because, like I said earlier, they don't have shit to stand on when it comes to accomplishments in the Senate. They have got absolutely nothing.